Blessings, Divine Masters of Light. Yeah, thank you for being here today. So today we're in the back country of Bellacoola, BC. We're on a ridge that goes through Haggensburg here. I had to hike up it, and it was just really raining. So I'm hoping it doesn't rain. It's kind of spitting right now, so I think I may have a window right now. So I have a great video for you today, and today we're going to talk about I got to kill my ego. All right, so stay tuned. Okay, so I got to kill my ego. Now tell us, how would you feel if someone took a contract out on you, right? So not to kill ego, but to transform it. And in that transforming, you have to transmute the energy to build a strong, powerful, productive, positive ego. I hear this all the time. I got to kill my ego. Even within the metaphysical realms. Similarly, you were told of the negative ego and how it can take away, how it can contract, how it can trick you, and it can give you messages to put you down, and messages of your greatness and your godliness, or goddessness, and make you think you are God, goddess, and perfect and special way you are. And now in the spiritual potential, we talk to you of your negative ego. So it's very important during this valuable time to gift yourself, particularly as we move through this year's exploration, particularly as you move through this decade of monumental change, particularly as you stand at the brink of either manifesting a future of nightmares or dreams or any mediocrity that may be in between. Along your journey, you have had to contend with ego and the human potential, and indeed, you are modest and warned and told of your negative ego and what it can do, and indeed what it can keep you from doing. And they were right. They did not lie to you. Your negative ego can keep all of that human potential and your potential away. The ego can squash and eliminate that human potential that you are about. You have heard it all before. I know all about my negative ego from way back then, years ago, or even 2 months ago or so, when I was first initiated into the human potential. I have been through the paces. Yes, I have been around the courses. I didn't come around in yesterday's rain. I know about my negative ego. I read books on it. I have listened and studied courses, and I've heard it and mentioned over and over and over again. I have listened to the audio. I know the course of my negative ego. I have been there. So negative ego becomes more threatening, becomes more dangerous, and becomes more destructive to your spiritual potential, because its livelihood is threatened, its existence is threatened, and its welfare is threatened far more completely as you are on the verge of going home, as you come close to touching that spark of love and light and that spark of spirituality that is within you. So quite ironically, at a time when you have heard so much of your negative ego, is the time to pay attention the most. A time when you have to go through years and years, negative ego, is a time to perk up and listen more intently and more clearly than ever before. A time when perhaps your negative ego is most dangerous and potentially most damaging is ironically the time that you are more likely to just ignore it, because I have been through all of that already. Some of you will learn how to conclude and end that codependent relationship. Others of you stretch beyond learning how and will actually, will actually begin to end this codependent relationship. Yet there will be those as well, the majority of you, admittedly, who will reach beyond, not just learn, not just beginning, but actually walk away from, not your ego, no, but instead walk away from your negative ego and the codependency that is utterly destructive and so utterly damaging to you and your reality. To at least remind you, to alert you that the impact your negative ego can have, the damage, the destruction, the utter terror it can produce, and its ultimate desire to destroy you, at the very least, to remind you of the sabotage you can do to yourself if you allow your negative ego to run or to dictate your life to you. Let it suffice that we look and remind you of a very important fact, and that is your negative ego can destroy you in minutes what has taken you months or even years to build and propagate. in a matter of a flash, in a single statement, in a single stubborn action, in a single delusion, in infidelity or indiscretion that can ruin loving relationships by destroying the intimacy or by killing the love, even if the other person never finds out about the indiscretion, never finds out about the infidelity. You know, the lie that can shatter trust, even if that lie is never exposed, even if you're the only one who knows it. A negative ego can destroy you in minutes what has taken some of you lifetimes to build. With the shortcut manipulation that backfires and blows up in your own face as you watch your reality crumble, avalanche, and slip through your fingers, or the delusion that you hold on to that causes everything to crumble and to seem to slip through your fingers, losing hold of the reality, or the delusion stubbornly adheres to that repeatedly betrays you and repeatedly betrays through and around you. So in minutes, the ego can take away what you have strived, what you have worked, what you have grown to accomplish. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have the power to do it alone, but it can take it away. Yes, the negative ego can be totally destructive and can end in minutes, and that is so important to understand. Sure, you can have this indiscretion or that infidelity, or you can tell this lie, or you can shortcut manipulation here and there. You can believe one of your delusions, and it may have no impact on you at all. It may have no damaging impact whatsoever, but the next one might, and if not the next one, then the one after that, then not that one, and perhaps you just don't know or ever know. Maybe you have been telling lies your whole life and it hasn't destroyed you yet, but at least you have convinced yourself it hasn't. But maybe the next one will. Yes, the damage of the negative ego is so powerful and so permanently apparent. And you can look at your life and you can see it, and you can tell yourself, and you can see it if you are willing to tell yourself the truth. Now, the ego takes over the content. If I can write the letters to myself, certainly I can respond to them too, right? So I'll take over the content of the higher world, and well, I'm added to the content of the underworld, and the content of, I'll just take the content I started within this conscious world, and I'll take over the whole bloody system. If I can control the input and the output, then I can control it all. Of course, your ego is not mature or wise or strong or smart, and is still miserably failing, and now you decide this is a intangible, I got to kill my ego. Now tell us, how would you feel if someone took a contract out on you, right? If you knew there was a murder out there, a hired assassin was going to kill you, would you march with glory? Are you kidding? You would make yourself scarce. You would come as invisible as possible. And how would you feel about the person who put the contract on you? All kinds of love you would want to get them before they get you. Personified, a lot more to take the point, but that's the point. When I decide I'm going to stop my ego, kill it. Not only that thinks you're the enemy, it knows you are the enemy, and it's going to get you before you get it. This is why your ego turns negative, because of the demands you make upon it. And the reason it's sole and singular is to destroy you, because it not only sees nature as the enemy, it sees you as the enemy. Its primary and only goal now is to destroy you with this negative ego fantasy of destruction or negative ego fantasy of illusions. Either way, it's going to get you. And that's why your ego always lies to you. When you do something dumb, it tells you it was the most brilliant thing ever done and everyone else is wrong. When you do something really beautiful, ego tells you, right? It's ego, it's arrogant. That was terrible, do better. You got this psychotic killer inside of you that wants to destroy you. When someone tells you that you have a psychotic killer, I would hate to think it's true. Aha, there's a psychotic killer somewhere in your house. And when you least expect it, they are going to carve you up into dog food. Don't you say that. I would hate to think that. I do not. You are wrong. I do not have a psychotic killer in me. Well, you realize that. What kind of crazy talk is that? That's exactly it. You're in your negative ego. How dare you say that? I am not. I handled my negative ego years ago. I healed myself. Never. Okay? Okay, if you say so. Same as saying you have a psychotic killer running your life. I wouldn't say that to anybody, and you shouldn't say that to me. Denial. We are exaggerated to make the point, because the point is that when you do this to your ego, it hates you. After all, you have made it feel totally foolish, totally dumb, totally weak, and you have kept it totally weak and totally dumb, totally naive and totally immature, and it hates you, and it has one goal: to destroy you. You have lots of goals, and it has one. Your ego beats people not because it's smarter, but because it only has one thing on its mind. It's not smarter than you. It's not stronger than you. It's not more mature than you. It's not more capable than you. It's got one motion: to destroy you, and that's why it's so important not to kill it. Don't pluck it out in that sense. You need to master your ego, divine ones. Ego is part of your personality. That's why to kill it is, in a sense, to lump off a chunk of your personality. The ego, when threatened with being killed, does everything in its power to go underground or to rise to the occasion, to overcome, and it has to see what the ego looks like, how it functions, and to get a grip on handling it, either through releasing it or through transforming it, divine ones. So to look at ego, what is its nature? What is its origins? What is the messages? And we will, go from there. There are personality characteristic traits and temperaments. That personality is the interaction between temperament and character. Now, we would suggest here to go further and talk about the temperament in terms set, and you determine your temperament, which you will have with you throughout your life. There are basic character functions or types, which are both positive and negative output, and you can change that, and you can change from the negative components of your particular set of characters to the positive, or you can change one set to another, and you have that option. But as far as temperament is concerned, you will approach it similarly, and you will keep that temperament through the rest of your life. It was chosen that way by yourself. We would suggest ego is part of your personality. It most definitely is part of your personality. That's why to kill it is, in a sense, to cut off a chunk of your personality. We do not encourage, nor does your ego, we would suggest it does not think kindly of you when you talk about killing it and things like that. It won't stand still for you to get too close enough to even attempt to kill it. So why don't you just stop trying to kill it rather than rather get rid of it and have it function properly, either through releasing or through transforming. So a rather easy approach is to talk about killing it. Is rather a simpler approach to talk about killing the ego, most definitely, and very, very much think about it in that particular regard. The part of you that in your reality is functioning, and realizing that there are things you're doing wrong and things you want to change about yourself, etc. As a result of that, of wanting to change, well, we will succeed by cutting this part of you. Well, if you walk funny, take your legs off. That will solve that. You wouldn't very much like that, nor go on for a cure. Simply, the ego, when threatened with being killed, does everything in its power to go underground or rise to the occasion to overcome, and it has. Whereas, in a sense, if you were to approach your own broken leg, for example, that is a disability that you have, with the idea of, let's harness it, set it in a cast, that's, because it will heal that way, let's change it so it can be healthy again. Indeed, you would want to do the similar thing with the ego. Well, it will cooperate more fully if you do that, indeed, and go after it to correct it rather than to eliminate it. Not to kill ego, but to transform it. And in that transforming, you have to transmute the energy to build a strong, powerful, productive ego. So there's so much more, right? There's this dynamic between you and your ego can be positive and powerful, so that the dynamic can be mature, responsible, compassionate, and just dynamic. When you have such a dynamic, positive, and powerful, mature, responsible, compassionate, and just so much that it can be yield, and so much that it can produce, for example, such a dynamic relationship between you and your ego can yield the spark of motivation, that can yield that reason to finish what is yet undone, in dealing with a negative ego or the face of ego, and it can also create that spark, that reason to find that something more that can allow the techniques that you already know to work with a greater punch, with a greater elegance, and most importantly, with greater success. So such a dynamic can be between you and your ego, can also yield an alliance in which to manifest the potential and the promises of so much more success, happiness, and joy that is so ripe, that is in each of you right now. As well, it can yield alliances, attracting alliances that can lead you to, or can bring to you, the potential and the opportunities to maximize your growth and to maximize your change. Alliance in which out to manifest potential and promise, out of which to draw to you, or to be drawn to the opportunities, the potential and opportunities to maximize your growth, can come from such dynamic relationship of self and ego. Your negative ego and your positive ego, both faces of ego, have also grown and changed. It's not the same ego, positive or negative, that it once was. You see, you have grown and you have changed, and we say it often because it is so utterly, fantastically, beautifully true, and so has your ego. Yes, your positive ego has grown stronger and more powerful. Your negative ego is not the same that it was, but your negative ego, who changes, have primarily been adaptive and also symptomatic, meaning there have been changes in symptoms rather than genuine, I'll never change, looking good, feeling good, and performing right, but not really changing, have been adaptive, symptomatic change. And even though it is not as negative overtly as it used to be, a negative ego is more sophisticated, not necessarily smarter, more sophisticated, more subtle, and therefore potentially insidious. Both ego faces have changed. The negative face of the ego can still obscure the positive one. The negative face of ego can still interfere with your plans and your dreams. So even though you don't need to know more, it is time to learn new ways to harness and transmute your negative ego. Partly because the old ways are still important, still valuable, still very effective, quickly can reach or risk reaching diminished return, where you end up having to work harder and longer with less achievement and less accomplishment and less to show for it. Therefore, as years even less than ago, right, you could use this technique that you know so well to deal with your negative ego. Now, using that same technique, you need to work longer and harder and have a diminishing return of less to show for it. You are at a risk of that at this junction, at this time, at this pivotal year, in this most monumental decade. Then you go into meditation. What's in my subconscious mind? Why am I getting all this ego yama? Because that's what is there, and it's taken over the content. Well, then I'll go deeper into my unconscious mind. Booga, there it is again. Then I'll just go down and talk to my higher self, who tells me I am the most evolved person on the planet, and evil forces know this, and that's why you were fired from your job, because the Illuminati is after you. The dark forces know that you can save the whole planet, and therefore they must get rid of you. That's why you're censored and blocked. That's why you got that disease. That's why this friend of yours betrayed you. They are jealous because they know you're the most evolved. You know, you are the highest in all the world. No, you're not. You're the evilest, the most malevolent force. You're the worst of the low. You are a slug in the human spiritual faces and races. You're a wart of disgrace on the face of humanity. You're a failure. You're not working hard enough. Do better. It's all ego crap, because your ego has taken over this and this and this, and the subconscious, the unconscious, and the higher conscious realms interpretations. So yeah, thanks for listening to me today. So you don't kill the negative ego, you transform your negative ego, divine ones.